Deadly mystery on trail. Hiker found dead 800 feet below Washington mountain trail after massive search effort. A tragic hiking incident in Washington state has ended with the discovery of a missing man's body deep below a dangerous mountain trail after an intense multi-day rescue operation. Now let's dive deeper and explore every layer of this story on our AI
You
podcast.
know, usually when you step onto a hiking trail, there's this really profound sense of leaving the chaos behind.
Right, you're looking for that escape.
Exactly. You intentionally trade the concrete for dirt, the noise for silence. It feels like a very controlled, peaceful escape into nature. You've got your trail map, your water bottle, maybe one of those GPS watches on your wrist.
Yeah, all the gear.
Right. And you look at this clearly marked path ahead of you, and it just creates this deep psychological comfort because you want to understand the world without being totally overwhelmed by it, right?
It creates an illusion of control, really.
An illusion.
Yeah, because we bring all our modern tools into the wilderness, and we basically convince ourselves we're still operating under the rules of civilization.
Ah, I see what you mean.
But you cross a certain elevation, or you watch the barometric pressure drop suddenly, and that illusion just completely vanishes. You realize the environment isn't a playground at all. It's a highly volatile, completely indifferent system.
And understanding how rapidly that system can turn hostile is the focus of our deep dive today.
It's a heavy topic, but a crucial one.
It really is. We're looking at some excerpts from a piece titled Fatal Altitudes, Tragedies on the American Peaks. And our mission today is to really dissect this massive, multi-day mountain rescue operation that recently took place in Washington state.
Yeah, up in the Cascades.
Right. And we want to use the mechanics of this specific search as a sort of lens to understand the sudden hidden dangers of high-altitude exploration. Like, why do things go wrong so incredibly fast?
Well, to really grasp those dangers, we need to kind of strip away the romance of mountaineering. We have to look at the raw, unfiltered logistics of an actual emergency.
So let's set the scene with the inciting incident here. It's a Sunday. A 34-year-old man from Bothell, Washington, just fails to show up for work.
Which immediately sets off red flags.
Exactly. His family and friends, they can't reach him, and they eventually figure out he went out for a solo hike on Mount Pew. Now, Mount Pew is it's a notoriously rugged peak near the western edge of the North Cascades.
It is not a beginner's hike.
No, not at all. It's steep, it's incredibly isolated, and it's just unforgiving.
And the moment a solo hiker fails to return from that specific geographic profile, an invisible ticking clock just instantly starts.
Because he's all alone out there.
Right. Every single safety net we rely on is immediately gone. There's no cell service to ping. There's zero rapid medical response. I mean, it literally ceases to be a hike and just becomes this sheer battle of human biology against alpine geology.
Wow, yeah. So the authorities end up finding his abandoned vehicle parked at the Mount Pew trailhead, and the moment they verify that empty car, the logistical response is just massive.
Oh, it has to be.
We are talking about an operation that pulls in the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, plus this huge alphabet soup of rescue organizations. You've got Everett, Tacoma, Olympic, Seattle, and Skagit Mountain rescue teams.
All converging at once.
Yeah, plus the Snohomish County Volunteer Search and Rescue. I mean, it's a small army.
And that level of mobilization tells us a lot about the actual threat level of Mount Pew. Mountain rescue at this scale, it isn't just about, putting a bunch of well-meaning people in the woods with flashlights.
Right. It's way more technical than that.
Absolutely. It requires deploying technicians who really understand how to navigate vertical, unpredictable landscapes.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because trying to coordinate a search grid in the North Cascades, it's basically trying to find a needle in a massive shifting haystack.
A very dangerous haystack.
Seriously, the haystack is thousands of acres of dense vertical terrain. It's covered in unpredictable weather, sheer drops, and these massive fields of loose scree. And for anyone listening who hasn't encountered it, scree isn't just like normal gravel.
Oh, far from it. Scree is this accumulation of loose fractured rock just resting on a steep incline.
It sounds like a nightmare to walk on.
It is. Walking on it is like trying to climb up a tilted slide that's just covered in broken dinner plates.
Oh, wow. What a visual.
For every 2 steps you take forward, you slide 1 step back. It drains a searcher's physical energy at an exponential rate. And, honestly, a single misstep can trigger a cascade of falling rock right onto the teams below you.
So dealing with terrain that actively fights back like that, where do you even begin looking for one single person?
It's the ultimate challenge.
Right. And our source notes that during the critical first 12 hours of this operation, the most valuable assets weren't the sheriff's helicopters or like high-tech drones.
Not at all.
The key to the search was actually the descending hikers, people just coming off the mountain.
Yeah, because in the methodology of mountain rescues, human intelligence is the absolute prerequisite. You might assume, a helicopter is the ultimate search tool.
I think most people would, yeah.
Right. But an aircraft flying over thousands of acres of dense alpine canopy is functionally blind if the crew doesn't know exactly where to focus.
Because they can't just hover there all day.
Exactly. Helicopters have very strict flight time limits based on fuel capacity and weather windows. You just cannot waste that precious time doing broad grid searches.
You have to shrink the haystack before you even deploy the aerial assets.
Bingo. Those descending hikers provided the crucial data points necessary to establish a timeline and what we call a last known point.
Right, the LQP.
Yes. By interviewing people coming down the trail, Command can map out where the missing hiker was absolutely seen and, honestly, more importantly, where he was not seen.
Ah, so it's a process of elimination.
Exactly. That process is what shrinks the search area from a massive mountain range down to a very specific topographical sector.
And once they shrink that haystack through human intelligence over day 1 and day 2, the aerial assets finally deploy into that specific sector. The sheriff's office helicopters start combing the really steep terrain.
Which leads us directly to the specific geological feature where the clues finally emerged.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to look at this purely from an investigative standpoint, of course, really respecting the deep tragedy of the outcome here.
Oh, of course.
So the helicopter crews, they spot the man's hiking equipment, but they don't find his gear just resting near a trail. They spot it near the top of what the source identifies as a couloir.
What's fascinating here is how the physical structure of a couloir dictates both the danger to the hiker and the extreme difficulty for the rescuers.
Can you explain what that actually is for us?
Yeah, so a couloir is a deep, very narrow, steep gully that intersects a mountainside. They're formed over millennia by water and ice erosion. So they aren't just steep valleys structurally, they are natural funnels.
Like because of the steep rock walls on either side?
Yes, precisely. Because of those flanking walls, anything that detaches from the upper mountain are falling rocks, shedding ice, avalanches, and unfortunately human bodies. It all gets channeled directly into and down this tight vertical chute.
That is terrifying.
It is. And furthermore, mountains experience these intense freeze-thaw cycles. Water seeps into the rock during the day, freezes and expands at night, and literally shatters the stone.
So it's constantly crumbling.
Exactly. When the morning sun hits that rock, the ice melts and the newly broken rock falls. A couloir just funnels all that geological debris straight downward.
Wow. So on Tuesday, which is the third day of the search, the helicopter actually flies rescue personnel directly into this environment.
Which is incredibly risky.
Yeah, they descend right into the couloir and they make the grim discovery. They find the missing hiker's body, but it is located a staggering 800 vertical feet below where his gear was first discovered.
That drop it's hard to even picture.
800 vertical feet. That measurement is almost difficult to comprehend. We're talking about an 80-story building's worth of distance between his pack and his actual location.
Yeah, it forces a really uncomfortable analysis of the mechanics of a high-altitude fall.
It raises this haunting question about what actually happened up there. Like, does finding the gear so far above the body suggest he simply, took his pack off to rest, left it there, and had a sudden fatal slip? Right? Or does that massive distance point to the violence of gravity and terrain literally ripping a person out of their heavy pack during a fall?
I mean, the physics of a tumbling fall down a rocky funnel of that magnitude are just devastating. The kinetic energy generated by a human body falling even 100 feet down a steep incline is immense.
I can't even imagine.
It easily overcomes the tensile strength of nylon straps and plastic buckles. The mountain violently strips away anything that isn't tethered with climbing-grade anchors.
Which just makes the reality of the rescue team's job even more staggering, right? They had to execute a helicopter insertion into that exact same rockline funnel on day 3 just to recover him.
Yeah, and the aerodynamics of flying a helicopter into a tight rock chute are incredibly hostile. You have thermal updrafts rising from the valley. You have the downwash from the helicopter's own rotors bouncing violently off the rock walls.
Just massive turbulence.
Extreme turbulence and very little blade clearance. The pilots and the recovery teams willingly stepped into an active hazard zone to bring him home.
And they successfully completed the recovery, transporting the body via helicopter back to Taylor's Landing, which is the headquarters for the Snohomish County Volunteer Search and Rescue.
A huge effort by everyone involved.
Truly. And the Snohomish County Medical Examiner is handling the investigation to determine the official cause of death. It's just a sobering, really tragic sequence of events.
It really is.
But, as our source material, Fatal Altitudes, points out, if we pan out from the specific geographical trap of Mount Pew, we start to see a much broader pattern.
Because the mountain environment is universally unforgiving.
Yeah.
And the author curates a very deliberate cross-section of recent American adventurer tragedies to prove that point.
Right, we aren't just looking at the Pacific Northwest here.
No, the scale is much wider.
The sources outline this cluster of incidents that literally span the globe. For instance, we have a tragedy on Mount Makalu in Nepal, where a Utah business owner descending the peak was just swept away by an avalanche.
Such a tragic story.
It really is. The source includes this heartbreaking detail that she actually died from her injuries in her husband's arms shortly after sharing this really emotional final message with her family online.
And then, moving to a different climate entirely, we have an incident in California. An acclaimed film and concert music composer was hiking Mount Wilson near Sierra Madre.
And that wasn't an avalanche, right?
No, there was no avalanche, no sheer drop into a couloir like we saw in Washington. He collapsed and died after suffering a sudden cardiac emergency right on the trail.
Wow. And then all the way across the country in New Hampshire, another devastating event. A hiker in the Franconia Notch mountain pass was trapped by unexpected snowfall.
The weather just turned on him.
Right. Officials noted he wasn't fully prepared for the sudden weather shift, and he was found miles away from his vehicle after the snow completely erased the trail.
Just completely disoriented.
Now, looking at this list, my instinct is to kind of push back on the default assumption of human error.
How so?
Well, when people hear these stories, especially the New Hampshire case where officials explicitly cited a lack of preparation, it is so easy for people sitting safely at sea level to point fingers.
Right, the armchair experts.
Exactly. To say, oh, they made a rookie mistake. But look at the diversity of these events. Nepal, California, New Hampshire, avalanches, sudden cardiac arrest, unexpected blizzards.
It's a wide spectrum.
It is. I'd argue the primary culprit here isn't necessarily a lack of skill. It's the absolute fragility of the human body when it's exposed to extreme, sudden environmental shifts.
I hear that, but we have to be careful not to entirely strip away human agency, right? Preparation, route finding, and risk assessment are critical variables that hikers absolutely control.
That's a fair point.
However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, your core point aligns perfectly with the data. Even with flawless preparation, the margin for error at altitude is just incredibly slim.
Because you're so far from help.
Exactly. The common denominator tying all these diverse tragedies together is that isolation acts as a lethal multiplier.
A lethal multiplier. I like that phrasing. Walk us through the biology of how that actually plays out in these scenarios.
Okay, think about the baseline physiological response to an emergency. If you suffer a minor cardiac event at sea level, in your neighborhood, it's frightening, sure, but you call an ambulance.
Right, they're there in 5 minutes.
You have a massive medical infrastructure supporting you. The air is thick with oxygen, giving your heart the exact fuel it needs while you wait for help.
You essentially have an entire societal safety net catching you.
But at altitude, the atmospheric pressure drops. The air is thinner, meaning each breath delivers significantly less oxygen to your bloodstream.
That's hypoxia, right?
Yes, hypoxia. And to compensate for that, your heart rate naturally increases to pump more blood. Now, imagine a hiker on Mount Wilson experiencing a cardiac issue under those conditions.
It's working overtime.
Right. The myocardium, the heart muscle itself, desperately demands more oxygen to keep pumping under the physical strain of the hike. But because of the altitude, that oxygen simply isn't there.
Oh, wow.
So what might have been a totally manageable, treatable event at sea level quickly cascades into massive cardiac ischemia and sudden arrest.
The environment literally weaponizes a biological hiccup.
Perfectly said. And we see the exact same multiplier effect with the weather in the New Hampshire tragedy.
Right, the sudden snowstorm.
Think about it. A sudden flurry of snow in a local city park is just an inconvenience. You walk back to your car, you turn on the heater, and you drive home.
And you might even enjoy it.
Right. But miles from a trailhead, That exact same sudden flurry of snow triggers a profound physiological and psychological crisis.
And that brings up the detail in the New Hampshire case that really stuck with me. He was found miles away from his car because the snow had completely covered the trail.
He couldn't find his way back.
Right. We think of snow as just being, cold and wet, but we don't always think about the neurological impact of a whiteout.
Oh, spatial disorientation is incredibly dangerous. Human navigation relies heavily on our visual cortex processing edge contrast.
Edge contrast? What's that?
It's the distinct line between things, like the line between a dark dirt trail and the green brush next to it, or the sharp horizon line separating the mountain from the sky.
Ah, okay. So when sudden snow blankets everything in uniform white.
Those visual anchors just vanish. You lose all depth perception. The brain's visual cortex starts sending conflicting signals to your vestibular system, which is what controls your inner ear and your balance.
That sounds incredibly disorienting.
It is. A hiker doesn't just lose the trail. Their brain physically loses the ability to determine which way is up, down, or straight ahead. Isolation turns a simple meteorological shift into a profound sensory failure before the hiker even realizes what's happening.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've thrown a lot of heavy, intense scenarios your way today.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. We've talked about the grueling mechanics of search operations, the brutal physics of a couloir, and the biological realities of altitude. But the reason we pull these sources together isn't to scare you away from the outdoors.
No, absolutely not.
It's to bring these massive high-altitude themes back down to a personal, practical reality for you.
Because the lessons embedded in these multi-agency rescues apply to every single person who steps off the pavement.
Whether it's a big trip or a small one.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you were prepping for an intense, multi-day summit push in the Cascades, or you're just throwing some water in a backpack for a quick weekend hike in the local hills.
The underlying truth that the source material proves unequivocally is that the wilderness commands absolute respect. The mountain does not care about your itinerary.
It really doesn't.
Weather, terrain, and our own biology can turn deadly without a single moment of warning.
This raises an important question about the balance we try to strike as humans. We possess this incredible inherent ambition,
I want to explore.
We do. We want to conquer the peaks. We want to experience the vistas. We want to test our physical limits. But nature operates with an absolute chilling indifference to our ambition.
Indifference is the perfect word for it.
A couloir funnels rock and ice the exact same way, regardless of whether the person standing inside it is a 20-year veteran mountaineer or a first-time novice. Gravity does not grade on a curve based on your experience level.
That concept that gravity doesn't grade on a curve is so crucial. We started this conversation talking about that illusion of control when you step onto a trail.
Right, the map and the water bottle.
Yeah, that comforting idea that a map, a water bottle, and a clearly marked path somehow insulate you from the raw physics of the planet. And through these case studies, we've seen how violently and how quickly that illusion breaks down.
We step past the tree line, assuming we are just observers of nature, when in reality, we instantly become fragile participants in its ecosystem.
Before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that profound spatial disorientation of the hiker in Franconia Notch, New Hampshire.
The whiteout effect.
Right. We talked about how the snow physically erased the path back to safety. It's terrifying to think about the cold or the steep drops, but perhaps the true ultimate danger of the wilderness isn't external at all.
The external elements are just the catalyst for the internal failure.
Right. Think about what happens in the mine when the landscape suddenly becomes totally unrecognizable. If a rapid snowfall can instantly blend the safe path perfectly with the deadly terrain around it, just stripping away your brain's visual anchors.
The panic sets in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most terrifying threat is how quickly the natural world can plunge even an expert rational mind into total psychological disorientation. When the visible path vanishes, that comfortable escape we talked about at the very beginning is just gone.
You're trapped with your own mind.
The wilderness isn't just a place around you anymore. It gets inside your head. It dismantles your sense of direction and your grip on logic. So keep that fragility in mind next time you step past this tree line.
Okay, one question for you. What challenges did rescue teams face while searching the steep and hazardous couloir on Mountain Peak? And how difficult was the multi-day operation to recover the missing hiker's body? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.